know that you stand in jeopardy. If you're going to do these things, no joshing, no mocking, no cute little banners and signs that we like to make at protests that we think are, mic drop statements. Stick to the passages, stick to the words, and know that handcuffs are coming. Welcome to Acts 2 and 42. Cuba sentences pastor to 8 years in prison for participating in peaceful protests. What's going on, guys? I wanted to share a couple articles to show some wins and losses in news lately for Christians. And this one's coming from thechristianpost.com. And in Cuba, there was a Protestant pastor that has reportedly been sentenced to 8 years in prison for participating in peaceful protests against Cuban's communist regime, bringing renewed attention to the government's harsh crackdown on religious activities and peaceful demonstrations. I'm going to mess his name up bad, but Pastor Lorenzo, did I say that right? I said that wrong. Pastor Lorenzo was detained without trial for over 2 months following protests in Cuba last summer, which were said to be the largest in decades amid ongoing shortages of medicine and food during COVID-19 pandemic. So it's been recently reported that he was just sentenced to 8 years for charges including disrespect and public disorder. The sentence occurred in late December. However, the government's March letter in response to a joint communication from 5 UN special procedures states that the parties had not been notified of the sentencing. The parties. In the letter, the Cuban government officials reportedly claimed that Pastor Lorenzo does not belong to a recognized church. So, the government also claims that Pastor Lorenzo was part of a violent attack. All right, so he's part of a violent attack on the Cuban Communist Party headquarters. All right, so it's possible. I would need evidence, right? I would need evidence of that. And obviously, if you know anything about communist countries, you don't get evidence and you don't get answers. But, it reminds me of, if you guys know, TJ had a music video years ago with George Downing, The Last Man Standing. And at the end of the video, we had added a quick excerpt of Paul Washer's talking about, in the last days when you're martyred, when you're sentenced, for your faith and even killed, it's not going to be glorious and you're not going to be seen as this wonderful person. They're going to accuse you of heinous crimes. They're going to say you were part of, violent attacks and insurrection and, terrorist plots and I don't know what to say. A lot of the words that you're going to be accused of, I can't say on YouTube. So long story short, but they're going to have all these allegations of you. And now with, the technology and from everything from, deep fakes and Photoshop to Project Bluebeam, they could literally fake any evidence against you and it would look like you, sound like you, and everyone would see it. Yep, you did it. That was you. It's scary technologically what can happen, But anyway, there's going to be false accusations. There's going to be, you've committed a great crime. And really, they're upset at what you're saying publicly. They're upset that you're, speaking for your faith. But anyway, let's see what he actually says. Video and images from the incident, however, showed agents from the Black Beret paramilitary force attacking unarmed protesters and Pastor Lorenzo being held in a chokehold. The head of an advocacy group has said that we have had numerous reports of Christian leaders being summoned by state security, interrogated and threatened, with some being forced into exile. And they're trying to fight these actions right now. One recent report involved a Christian couple who are high-profile pastors in the Las Tunas region. The couple was summoned, interrogated, and threatened for 6 hours, according to Stengel, because of their involvement in organizing a prayer service for political prisoners and highlighting the case of Pastor Lorenzo, whose wife was also threatened. So if you try to put together a prayer service for these people, you'll be interrogated and threatened for 6 hours. These crude intimidation tactics demonstrate how the Cuban government fears the influence of Christian leaders, and ironically, considering the atheistic ideology held by most Cuban Communist Party officials, their recognition of the power of prayer. That's an interesting statement. If prayer was meaningless, then what is your fear of people coming together to talk to an imaginary man in the sky? Anyway, I think naturally speaking, it does. I think there is a fear that it will promote this fight against them, whether or not God will act in our favor or not. So I think it's both sides, but it is kind of funny. So the article goes on to talk about, since the pandemic, there's been a lot of different demonstrations, just like in this country, that led to arrest and bad treatment of Christians, which they're fighting against. I'll link the article down below. For now, let's go to some good news. All right. Coming from ChristianityToday.com. Christian condemnations of the LGBT, not hate speech in Finland, court rules. A politician who tweeted Romans 1:24-27, which is against homosexuality, and a bishop who published a pamphlet, win unanimous decisions. Helsinki District Court judges have dismissed hate speech charges. All right. Oh, I just cringe when I hear hate speech. Words are not violence. Okay. It's just hate speech. Oh my God. What is hate speech? Where are we? Where are we today? And this is a win, but I'll talk about why overall it's not. So anyway, against a Finnish politician who tweeted out Bible verses, and the bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Mission who published a pamphlet on gender roles in a unanimous decision. Now, he just published a pamphlet, like these are heinous crimes. In a unanimous decision, the judges ruled on Wednesday that whatever the heck that name is, respect to you, a parliamentarian who faced a potential sentence of 120 daily fines. Hold on. So I think daily fines have to do with, your income per day times the number of days, if I'm not mistaken. There's a ratio there that they use that's a amount of money, right? And it's something to do with 120 days worth of fines. And I think they take their income into account. But anyway, said things that were partly offensive, but not hate speech. So they ruled in his favor and against, this punishment. In a related decision, Bishop, I wish I was better at foreign names. The bishop who faced a potential 60 daily fines was found not culpable, not accountable, not responsible, not to blame for the publication and it names the publication, which I can't pronounce either. And it says male and female, he created them. Certain stuff. And I've participated in it, admittingly, I'm not proud to say, admittingly though, it seems to make sense, but I think it does more harm than good when we say things like, he created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. It's a catchy phrase, but, I think you not only alienate anyone in the middle, you just offend, right? First of all, because it seems like you're poking fun. It seems like you're mocking. It comes off a certain way. We ought to care about that. We ought to care because we're supposed to represent Christ. So unfortunately, the things that I do can tarnish his name. So I think the Apostle Paul said that let our words be seasoned with grace, that we know how to answer every man differently. So, there's just that we use a different approach for different people for different reasons, but all in all, so that we don't injure anyone unnecessarily, but also so that we don't tarnish the name of Christ, but also people in the middle, people in the middle stop listening when they feel like you're mocking and being disrespectful. I joke around at times and like even now we're talking about serious things, but I joke, and it's not that I don't take them seriously. It's just my nature. It's just my personality. I find humor in things. I joke around a little bit and I don't mean offense, but I have to be careful. I have to be cautious of that. And then lastly, the people that already agree with you can be pushed away because that's, bad form. It's bad conduct and they don't want to be associated with that. So anyway, but male and female, he created them. Nothing offensive about that statement, right? Because it's straight from chapter and verse. The ruling is being hailed a victory for free speech and freedom of religion for this person and their supporters. I greatly appreciate that the court recognized in this ruling the importance of free speech. I hope that this ruling will prevent others from having to go through the same ordeal. This has been my honor. Wow. The judge found that the purpose of their writing was not to insult or harm LGBT people, but to defend what she believed to be biblical concepts of family and marriage. In its decision, the court said that her comments included both value judgments and factual statements that might be considered offensive, but the statements did not amount to incitement of hatred, quote unquote, and should thus be considered legal. So remember, chapter and verse. When we deviate from chapter and verse, we start throwing in our own, slang terms and jokes and mocking, phrasing. Even legally, that's where she could have found herself in trouble. But they found that she's like, no. She's not saying anything harmful. She's not saying anything insulting. They could have found it insulting had she said like Adam and Steve or something like you're poking fun, because that's obviously not in the Bible, But everything came from the Bible, right? And all she's doing is sharing what she believes are good value statements and factual value judgments and factual statements. So I think her good conduct is why the court ruled in her favor. Significantly, the court also stated in its decision that it's not their job to interpret biblical concepts. Good for them. Good for them. Hey, if I'm coming from the Bible, right, and I'm quoting chapter and verse, even if I'm wrong and you think it's the wrong interpretation, the court is not the arbiter of biblical truth. They don't determine if I'm using the scripture properly, but just if I believe that I am. So that's awesome that the court is recognizing they don't get to determine if it's biblically accurate or not, or if that's the proper interpretation. Under Finnish law, the judge says they are not able to determine whether a particular interpretation of a scriptural passage is correct. Good for them. Though both the prosecutor and the judges stated from the outset that the trial was about rights and freedoms, not biblical interpretation, the Bible played a prominent role in the courtroom. According to Finnish media, both parties cited biblical text so frequently that the court's chairman had to remind them that the judges would decide the case on the basis of Finnish law, not the Christian scripture. And yes, so if your words and if your conduct were that biblical, then your defense and the conversation would all be scriptural, right? Let's see. LGBT advocates were more equivocal about the verdict's significance on the day it was handed down. It was not clear, they say, how the court's ruling will be used to evaluate the harm done by religious speech. The harm done by speech. I don't know how to pronounce that person's name. Kurtu Tarjamo. I don't know. Secretary General of LGBT rights organization SETA was encouraged that the court agreed that her public opinions, the person, in question, public opinions regarding gay people are deeply offensive to many persons belonging to sexual minorities. So how so, though? Like if I just say my religious view, I believe from my religious text written long before you were here says that this is not a healthy lifestyle that God approves of. How am I offending you? So you want all thoughts, all schools of thoughts, all religions, all philosophies to favor your life practice today. It's asinine. And it's not going to happen for me. That what I think should be done in my household, like that there's not a religion out there that says otherwise. There's not an ancient text that says otherwise. Are you locking up imams and Islamic preachers and teachers because they believe the same things? Like, what about they do? We're not even going to get started on that. I want to talk about how offensive and harmful the Islamic faith is practiced. Some from the text and some not from the text, admittingly. But nonetheless, it's like this person just says something, hands out a piece of paper, says that, in Genesis, 1, God made male and female. And it's the words of Jesus Christ. We talked about marriage and divorce in another kind of article I was sharing about divorce. And that's what he said. He goes back to Genesis from the beginning. God made a male and female to be joined as one. Well, what God joined together, let no man put asunder. Like, I didn't make those words up. I'm just saying I believe them. I believe them and I'm sharing them with others. Like, man, I'm not attacking you. So anyway, not all hate speech is punishable under Finnish law, this person says, but offensive statements can be considered harassment. And the National Non-Discrimination Act could be revised to include statements that target groups of people and not just individuals. Wow. The National Non-Discrimination Act could be revised to include statements that target groups of people, i.e. Christians in this case, or a local church, and not just individuals. Despite the unanimous verdict, prosecutors may go to the higher court. Speaking to reporters, prosecutor Mantilla said it is highly probable that this case will be submitted to the Court of Appeals. So they're going to try to appeal it and try to inflict punishment anyway. So although they're celebrating, the fight continues. So why this is a victory temporarily, but it's why it's not a victory. Because for one, they're going to appeal it. They're still pursuing it. And for two, they're pursuing changing the law. So they want the National Non-Discrimination Act to be revised to include not just this one person, but the party or group of people that they're associated with. I'm guessing that's how I interpret this. But here's why it's not a win. I think it's an indicator of where we are. There's another article here of a street preacher cleared of hate speech charges for preaching from the Bible. And, this is in the UK. Okay. Now, in both of these cases, they were arrested and charged for either handing out a pamphlet or giving speech in public about their own religious views. Either way, that is not a victory. That is an indicator that we are not in a freedom-friendly world, period, no matter what country you live in. But much less a Christian morals and values friendly world, a religious friendly world. Know that you stand in jeopardy. If you're going to do these things, man, cross your T's and dot your I's. Be on your P's and Q's, whatever that means. No joshing, no mocking, no cute little banners and signs that we like to make at protests that we think are, mic drop statements. Stick to the passages, stick to the words, and know that handcuffs are coming, or mob, because that happens. So that I think that's an indicator of where we are and where we're going. Whether they won today in court or not, make no mistake, it's not good news, So the mobs, news from Pakistan recently, right? 6 men get death penalty for mob killing over a blasphemy claim. If you know us, we work closely with ministries in Pakistan, and we're familiar with those that are being persecuted, churches and homes being burnt down, aside from other needs there, but that's always an issue. So, I know most of us are not familiar with Islamic policies, Islamic countries' policies, but real quick, blasphemy law in Pakistan. Okay. So it penalizes penalties. It penalizes blasphemy against any recognized religion, providing penalties ranging from a fine to death. It says around 80 are known to be incarcerated in Pakistan on blasphemy charges. Half of those face life in prison or the death penalty. For the last roughly 40 years, 1,300 people have been accused of blasphemy, with Muslims constituting most of these accusations. So I think what tends to happen if you say things contrary to the faith, and this is why it's so dangerous to be a Christian there, because if you speak in affirmation of Christianity and Christ, that can be perceived as blaspheming Muhammad, blaspheming, Sharia law or anything, which is the religious, code of conduct and law. It's very savage. So you can just be speaking for Christ, and it can be taken as blasphemy, right? If I'm not mistaken, let me know what you guys know about this if I'm wrong. According to human rights groups, blasphemy laws in Pakistan have been exploited not only for the persecuting of minorities. Let's understand the term minorities is not referring to brown people. Minorities is referring to the religious minority, which less than 2%, I think, of Pakistan is Christian, but also basically Christian, but also for settling personal rivalries, often against other Muslims. Let's see. Context. Many people accused of blasphemy have been murdered before their trials were over, and renowned figures who opposed the blasphemy law have been assassinated. Since 1990, 62 people have been murdered following blasphemy accusations. According to the religious minority source, an accusation of blasphemy commonly exposes the accused, police, lawyers, and judges to harassment, threats, attacks, and rioting. Critics complain that Pakistan's blasphemy law are overwhelmingly being used to persecute religious minorities, like I told you, and settle personal vendettas. Many atheists in Pakistan have been lynched and imprisoned over unsubstantiated allegations of blasphemy. When the state initiated a full-fledged crackdown on atheism since 2011, it has become worse, with secular bloggers being kidnapped and the government running advertisements urging people to identify blasphemers among them. And the highest judges declared such people to be terrorists. So here, religious minorities are both Christians and atheists. So we have something in common today, guys. So we can be friends. But anyone that stands against the Islamic State, or Muslims that you offend and they don't like you and they know you're Christian or atheist, they're just going to bring this up, as a way to attack you. So a court in Pakistan has sentenced 6 people to death for beating a Sri Lankan man to death and burning his body over allegations of blasphemy. An anti-terrorist group in Lahore, Punjab province, also gave life sentences to 9 people, 5 years imprisonment to 1, and 2-year sentences to 72 people who were part of the mob. And adding 8 of those sentences were juveniles. Quote, "We are against the death penalty. However, in this case, there had to be a precedent set against vigilantism and mob violence." So this is a mixed bag. It's definitely a loss for the man accused. I don't know if he was Christian, but the man accused of blasphemy. But I would say at least it's a win for punishment of vigilantism and mob violence. At least this mob, which I believe are the ones, the article's talking about 6 men get death penalty, right, for mob killing over a blasphemy claim. So at least the government here, which is not friendly to religious minorities, but at least they're doing something against the mob violence. I don't know. Video clip shared on social media last December showed a mob allegedly supporters of an Islamic party beating the Sri Lankan man and setting his body ablaze. Some men in the mob took selfies with the burning corpse in the background. I don't know that this was a Christian. I haven't seen that in the article yet, but it's a pretty good chance of it. But I do know that this is happening to Christians there, whether it was this man or not, as well as other countries. So Mr. Kumara allegedly tore a poster of the hardline something Pakistan in which Quranic verses were inscribed and threw in the dustbin. An anonymous official was quoted as saying, the poster of the Islamic Party was pasted on the wall adjoining the office of Kumara. A factory worker saw him remove the poster and spread the word in the factory. Again, is this true? Either way, I mean, think about how bad, people are crying about the oppression in this country and stuff. And it's like, well, he tore a poster off the wall. That's what he's accused of doing. And a mob was so upset that he got let out. And I don't know, there could be more to this, but nonetheless, neither is this the first case of public lynching, nor is it going to be the last unless the government and politicians take this matter seriously and make appropriate changes to the law. Saeed said in a statement, calling the incident one of the worst examples of how people are misusing the blasphemy law. So a few wins, a few losses, some things going on in Christian news, and altogether not good. So again, keep in context, we're not as persecuted and oppressed as we think we are. Is it good? No. Is it heading to that? Probably. But here's some real people from the man in Cuba, even those winning in court, I think in Finland and I think the UK. It's not over yet, so keep praying for these people and pray for the Christians like the people in Pakistan. We have brothers and sisters from Pakistan and brothers and sisters in Pakistan, so definitely pray for them and their families, brothers and sisters over there. Keep that all in mind. Keep it in your prayers. And, stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.